Eric, it's really good to see you. Thanks so much for coming in. You know, I look at this report, the challenges ahead in balancing the state budget. First off, I want you to start by telling me, why did you decide to tackle this research-wise, and what did you expect to find?
So we took it on. We've been, in our 101-year history, sort of a monitor of City of Detroit finances, state finances. During the last decade, when things were really bad in Michigan, we were the voice going out and letting people know that this isn't just the economy that's bad, that we've set up a state funding system with a lot of problems in it. Well, we got through that in the last 5 or 6 years, have been pretty good. Things have been growing in the state. But during that time, our legislature's built in a lot of future spending with term limits. So let's put it out into the future. I'll be term limited out. It'll be somebody else's issue to deal with. And they were also assuming that the state revenues would take off, that growth would mean a lot more revenue and they could afford these things. So we kind of were watching all these things taking place, and we know a recession's coming soon. We know that all these pressures are out there, and we want the people to understand this isn't something that's just popping up on us when this bad stuff happens. It's here, and we have to recognize it now and start planning for it.
So it's kind of baked in, and it's been a little bit of finger crossing, hoping that things continue to grow, and a little bit of kicking the can down the road. So what did you specifically find that we're going to have to watch out for now in the next couple of years when it comes to the state budget?
So we have a total state budget that's almost $57 billion, but because we want certain monies to go to certain things. We want the lottery money and the sales tax money to go for schools. That goes into a separate fund. We want gas tax money to go for roads, so that goes into a separate fund. And what you're left with is a $10 billion fund that we call the general fund,
right,
that funds universities and Medicaid and revenue sharing for local governments and a lot of things like that, state police. So out of that $10 billion fund, we found that 20% of it, $2 billion, will be dedicated to tax credits, to the highway funding that was part of the 2015 package, to just a number of different things. So you're taking 20% out of the budget away, and now we know that there's a recession coming. I don't know when, I don't know how big or how bad, but it's going to make it very difficult to balance the budget going forward, and going to mean real cuts or a new tax to make up that difference.
So that's what I was going to say. I mean, where is the squeeze going to be coming in? And then how palatable, though, is new taxes? I mean, we're always hearing that Lansing, well, we want to give people a break.
Right. With this legislature, with the sort of conservative nature of the state, taxes thus far have been off the table. But it's going to take some hard choices when we get down the road. We're talking about Medicaid again. So are we going to push people off of health care? All the things that we've been doing over the last decade or so, trying to get more people covered. Are we going to push them out, leave them to fend for themselves? If we cut money for universities, that means higher tuition, or people just can't afford to go. We start cutting revenue sharing to local governments. Now there's police and fire at the most local level that we're laying off officers, and our communities maybe aren't as safe as they were. State police, it just goes down the line. Corrections is another big issue. So are we going to close prisons, put more people out on the, free to go, or condense them into fewer prisons? And we know that creates more issues.
So this report really sounds the alarm of what could be happening now in the next 1 or 2 years. What are, I guess, some of the fixes? And you say it's legislative.
Absolutely, it's legislative. They created this and they can fix it. But it's recognizing now that we have these issues and planning for them going forward, not dealing with it in a crisis mode, and then things really get bad. So the fixes, again, should there be more revenue? Since our revenues didn't grow as much as we hoped over the last 5 or 6 years, with the income tax and the use tax and our corporate income tax, should we find different revenue sources, or think about the rates being levied on those types of things? Or we end up in a cutting mode, and there is the idea that government could be cut, but how are we going to do it? What are our highest priorities? Where do we get the biggest bang for the buck?
So when you issue a report like this, what kind of reaction have you been getting from lawmakers who take a look at this?
And we've been getting a very positive response, both from the general public who's seeing these things and thanking us for it, from local government communities who want to know what's coming so they can plan, be aware of it. And the executive branch, the governor's office, the state budget office, they know about these things and they want others to know about it. So they're thankful that we're getting the word out. And now it's up to the legislature really to take this on. You know, I think the key people know about it, but are you just going to wait and let the next legislature deal with it? Or are you going to be proactive and take it on now and plan for it and be prudent about it?
And I think that's really the next look here is like, what are candidates saying about this? Because obviously we're already starting to talk about candidates for governor, and they're the ones that really are going to have this kind of put on their lap, and also people who are going to be running for the state house.
We're going to have a lot of turnover. About 3/4 of the Senate is term limited out this year. So we're going to have a lot of turnover in the Senate. We have always a lot of turnover in the House, but as House members think about maybe they should be senators, that's going to create even more turnover. And of course, the governor's race that you mentioned, that there's people thinking that they should be in charge, and it's going to create some real hard decisions coming down the line. So it'd be great if this were part of the conversation. Somebody wants to be governor, fine. What are you going to do about this? What's your highest priority? Where should the spending be concentrated, and what could be cut to deal with these issues coming down the line?
Do you think people pay enough attention to that when we are electing our leaders?
Well, you know, we've gotten into this Facebook, social media campaigning for offices and the 24/7 news cycles. So I don't think we always deal with enough of the meaty issues at any level.
Because seriously, when you talk about the state budget, this is a lot of peas and carrots that I think that sometimes people are like, well, does it mean I have to write a bigger check somewhere along the line? Or is it going to affect where I send my kids to school? But taking a deep dive at these numbers, though, is really what we should be concentrating on.
Yeah, and, you know, and this is a lot of the detail that I don't expect the average person to, you know, get into. What does all that mean? How does it play out? But certainly be aware of it, because as you say, do I want my teenager to go to college someday? Well, can I afford it? What are my taxes being used for? Is that going to matter? Am I willing to pay a little bit more in taxes so that my school has enough money so we're not putting 40 kids in a classroom or things like that? So it plays out, and a lot of times we just don't connect the dots that $1 of tax here leads to a result down the line, and that affects me personally. So understanding government is very important for that sort of thing.
So you said that you're in the 101st year
Yes.
of the Michigan Citizens Research Council, and you guys have been looking at funding and public funding for many things. You've had your hands full, I would say, over the past 5 years, taking a look at what's been happening in Michigan, Detroit schools. What else are you working on that we can be looking forward to in the future?
So we're doing a project on Michigan's teacher pipeline. There's a lot of attention in Detroit on the shortage of teachers, but that plays out across the whole state. That our aging teachers are retiring and moving on, and we don't have the same number of kids coming through college in the education schools. So that's creating an issue in some areas now and a bigger issue down the line. We're looking at the Medicaid expansion and how that's played out in the state. We're doing some stuff looking at special authorities and the governance of special authorities, such as the RTA, and asking whether that should be a one-man, one-vote governance of those systems, or the idea that they'll just represent the county, that we should have equal representation of counties regardless of the population in those counties. We have a number of things coming down, and it's going to be a lot of interesting work coming out. And I'd love people to come see our website at crcmich.org, crcmich.org.
Perfect, and we will have a link to it on our website, MiWeek, as well.
Good.
Eric Lupher, it's always good to see you. Thanks so much for coming in, and we look forward to hearing more about what you guys are going to be working on the next coming months.
I appreciate you having me.
All right, take care.